Hello everybody, can you see and hear me okay? Can you hear and see me? Go ahead and get started. Tonight's story of Rabbi Nachman is of a king and an emperor. There was once an emperor who had no children. There was also a king who had no children. The emperor traveled about the earth, wandering around in search. Perhaps he would find some remedy or tonic that would enable him to have children. Similarly, the king also traveled, and the two of them happened to come and stay at the same inn, and they did not know one from one another. The emperor recognized royal manners in the king, so he asked him, and the king admitted that he was a king. The king also recognized royal manners in the emperor, and the emperor also admitted it to the king. Each one told the other that the purpose of his travels was in order to have children. They agreed between them that if after they returned home, their wives gave birth, one to a boy and one to a girl, they would make a marriage match between them. The emperor returned home and fathered a daughter, and the king returned home and fathered a son. The agreement, however, was forgotten by both of them. The emperor sent his daughters to study, and the king also sent his son to study. It turned out that they were both sent to the same teacher, and they loved each other dearly, so they agreed between them to marry each other. The king's son took a ring and placed it on her hand, and they were married. Afterwards, the emperor sent for his daughter and brought her home. The king also sent for his son and brought him home. Matches were suggested for the emperor's daughter, and she was not interested in any match on account of the bond she had already made with the king's son. The king's son yearned for her greatly, and the emperor's daughter was also always sad. The emperor would walk her through his courtyards and palace, showing her greatness, and she was sad. The king's son yearned for her so much that he became ill, and no matter how much he was asked, "Why are you ill?" he did not want to say. So they asked his servant, "Maybe you can inquire by him." The servant told them that he knows the reasons, since he was there at the place where the king's son was studying. He told them the matter. The king then remembered that he had already made a marriage agreement with the emperor a long time ago, so he went and wrote to the emperor to prepare himself for the wedding, since they had already made the agreement long ago. The emperor no longer wanted the match, but he was not able to be brazenly refused. So he replied that the king should send his son to him, and he, the emperor, will see if the king's son is capable of ruling countries. Then he, the emperor, will give his daughter to him, the king's son, in marriage. The king sent his son to the emperor. The emperor set him in a room and gave him government documents to see if he was capable of ruling the country. The king's son was deeply yearning to see the emperor's daughter, but it was not possible for him to see her. Once, while walking along a wall of mirror, he saw her and fainted. She went over to him and roused him, and she told him that she does not want any other match on account of the bond between them. So he said to her, "What can we do? Your father does not want it." She said, "Nevertheless." Afterwards they took counsel and decided to go out on the ocean. So they rented a ship and set out on the ocean, and they traveled on the ocean. Afterwards they went to come to the shore, and they set ashore. There was a forest there, and they went there. The emperor's daughter took the ring and gave it to him, and she lay down to sleep. Afterwards the king's son saw that she was about to wake up, so he put the ring next to her. Afterwards they got up and went to the ship. Meanwhile she remembered that they had forgotten the ring there, so she sent him back to fetch the ring. He went there and was unable to find the spot, so he went somewhere else, and he could not find the ring. He went from place to place searching for it until he got lost and was unable to return. She went to look for him, and she too got lost. The king's son went farther and farther astray, and afterwards he saw a path, and he went to habitation. He had nothing to do, so he became a servant. She too went around lost, so she decided that she would stay near the ocean, so she went to the seashore, and there were fruit trees there, and she settled there. During the day she went near the ocean, maybe she would find passerby, and she survived from the fruit. At night she climbed up a tree to protect herself from wild beasts. The day came when there was an extremely great merchant who did business throughout the entire world. This merchant had an only son, and the merchant was old. Once the son told his father, "Being that you are already old, and I am still young, and your secretaries don't supervise me whatsoever, when you die I will be left alone without any knowledge what to do. So give me a ship with merchandise so I can set out overseas in order to be experienced in business." So his father gave him a ship with merchandise. The son went to countries and sold the merchandise, purchased other merchandise, and was successful. While at sea they saw those trees where the emperor's daughter was, and thought that it was a settlement, so the merchant's son wanted to go there. As they approached they saw that they were only trees, so they wanted to return. Meanwhile the merchant's son looked into the ocean and saw that there was a tree upon which was the appearance of a human being. He thought that perhaps he was having an illusion, so he told the other men who were with him. They too looked and saw the appearance of a human being on the tree. So they decided to draw near. They sent a man with a small boat, and they looked into the ocean in order to guide the scout so that he does not veer from the way, so that he goes directly to the tree. He went there and saw that sitting there was a human being, and he told them. The merchant's son, he went himself and saw her sitting there, and he told her to come down. She replies that she does not want to enter the ship unless he promises that he will not touch her until they reach his home and marry her lawfully. He promised her, and she entered the ship with him. He saw that she could play musical instruments and speak several languages, which brought him joy that she had came about to him. Afterwards, as they began drawing near to his home, she told him that it would be only right for him to go home and inform his father, relatives, and all his acquaintances, so that they all come out to greet her, since he was bringing such a prestigious woman. After that she would reveal her identity to him, because previously she had stipulated with him that he should not ask her who she was until after the wedding, at which time he would know who she is. He agreed with her. She said to him, "It is also only right, since you are bringing such a prestigious woman, that you will inebriate all the sailors so that they realize what kind of woman their boss is marrying." He agreed with her. So he took an excellent wine that he had on board ship and gave it to them, and they got very drunk, and he went home to inform his father and relatives. So sailors got drunk, and they disembarked from the ship and collapsed, wallowing in their drunkenness. While they were preparing themselves to go with the entire family and greet her, she went and untied the ship from the shore, spread the sails, and set out with the ship. So they, the merchant's family, came to where the ship had been and found nothing. The merchant was enraged at his son, and his son cried out, "Believe me, I brought a ship filled with merchandise, etc. But they don't see anything." The merchant's son said to his father, "Ask the sailors." So he went to ask them, but they were lying there drunk. Afterwards they came around, and he asked them, but they knew nothing about what had happened to them. They only knew that they had brought a ship with merchandise, but they don't know where it is. The merchant was enraged with his son and banished the son from his home, so that the son should never again appear before him. So he, the merchant's son, went away from him and wandered about. She, the emperor's daughter, sailed on the high seas. The day came when there was a king who built for himself a palace near the sea. He favored building a palace there on account of the sea air, and ships go there. Translator note, it is not clear whether the ships going there is another reason or if it is an aside. So the emperor's daughter was sailing on the sea, and she came close to this king's palace. The king looked and he saw a ship without a crew and with no one on board. He thought he was having an illusion. He ordered his man to have a look, and they too saw as he did. She came closer to the palace. Afterwards she resolved, what does she need this palace for? So she started going back, but the king sent and brought her back, and brought her to his home. Now this king did not have a wife, because he could not choose anyone for himself, because whoever he wanted did not want him, and vice versa. When the emperor's daughter arrived there, she told him to swear to her that he would not touch her until he legally marries her, and he swore to her. She told him that it would be proper not to open her ship and not to touch it, just to let it stand as it is on the water until the marriage. Then everyone would see the vast amount of merchandise she had brought, so that they should not say that he had taken a common woman. He promised her he would do this. The king wrote to all the countries to gather and to come to his wedding. He built a palace for her, and she commanded that they bring her 11 daughters of nobility to keep her company. So the king commanded, and 11 daughters of very high-ranking nobles were sent to her, and a special palace was built for each of them. She also had her own special palace. These young noble women, would gather with her, and they played musical instruments and games with her there. Once she told them that she would accompany them on the ocean, so they went with her and were playing there. She told them that she would honor them with good wine that she had. She gave them the wine that was on the ship. They became drunk, collapsed, and fell asleep. She then went and untied the ship, spread out the sails, and fled with the ship. They, the king and his men, took a look and saw that the ship was not there, and were panic-stricken. The king warned them not to tell her, the emperor's daughter, suddenly, since she would be extremely distressed over the loss of such a valuable ship, because the king did not know that she herself had fled with the ship, and assumed that she was still in her room. Also, she might suspect that the king had given the ship to someone. Rather, they should send one of the young noble women to her and inform her wisely. So they went to the room of one of the young noble women and found no one. The same happened when they went to another room, and to all of the 11 rooms they found no one. And they decided to send at night some elderly noblewoman to inform her. They went to her room and found no one. They became terrified. Now the fathers of these young noblewomen, who were accustomed to correspond with their daughters, thought that they were sent letters but were not receiving any from their daughters. So these nobles went there themselves and found out that their daughters were not there. They were enraged and wanted to send the king to his death, for they were royal ministers. However, they came to the decision, what crime did the king do that he should be sent to his death? For it was a circumstance beyond his control. So they decided to dethrone him and send him into exile. They deposed him and exiled him, and he went on his way. The emperor's daughter, who had fled with 11 daughters of nobility, was traveling with the ship. Eventually the young noble women woke and began to play again as before, because they did not realize that the ship had left port. They said to her, "Let's go back." She answered them, "We'll stay here a bit longer." Afterwards a storm wind arose, and they said, "Let's go home." So she informed them that the ship had already left port. They asked her why she had done that. She replied that she was afraid that the ship would be wrecked by the storm wind. Therefore, she was forced to untie it and spread the sails. So they were sailing on the ocean and playing musical instruments. They came across a palace. The daughters of nobility said to her, "Let's go there," but she did not want to. She said that she regretted having approached the previous palace of the king who wanted to marry her. Sometime later, they saw some kind of island, and they went there. There were 12 thieves there, and the thieves wanted to kill them. So she asked, "Who is the greatest among you?" And they showed her. She said to him, "What do you do?" He told her that they were thieves. She said to him, "We are also thieves. Just while you rob with your might, we rob with shrewdness, because we are skilled in languages and musical instruments. Therefore, what benefit would you have by killing us? Surely it is better that you take us for wives, and then you will also have our wealth." She showed them what was on the ship, and they agreed to her suggestion. The pirates showed them also all their wealth and took them to all their places. They agreed. Now I'm lost. Sorry about that. They agreed not to marry all at the same time, but one after another. Also, a selection should be made to give each one the noble woman that was befitting him according to his importance. Afterwards, she told them that she would honor them with extremely good wine that she has on board the ship, wine which she does not partake, but keeps stored away until the day that God will bring her destined husband. She gave them the wine in 12 goblets and instructed that each of them should drink a toast to each of the 12. So they drank, got drunk, and collapsed. She told her retinue, "Each of you go and slaughter your designated husband." They went and slaughtered them all. They found enormous wealth there, the likes of which cannot be found by any king. They decided not to take copper or silver, but only gold and precious stones. They cast out from their ship things which aren't so important, and loaded their ship with the precious things, the gold and precious stones they found there. They also came to the decision not to dress any more like women, so they sewed men's clothing for themselves, German style, and they sailed with the ship. The day had come, and there was an old king who had an only son whom he married off and transferred to him his kingdom. The prince said that he would take a cruise on the ocean with his wife, so that she could become accustomed to the sea air, lest, God forbid, they be at some time forced to flee to the sea. So he went with his wife with the royal ministers and set out on the ship. They made very merry and played games. At some point they said that they would all get undressed, and they remained clad only in their shirts. They made a challenge who could climb the mast, and the prince attempted to climb it. Meanwhile, the emperor's daughter approached with her ship, and she saw this ship on which were the prince and the ministers. Initially, she feared going there. When they got a bit closer, she saw that they were intensely occupied in a game, so she realized that they were not pirates. So they began to approach. The emperor's daughter bragged to her retinue, "I can knock that bald fellow," referring to the prince who was climbing the mast, "into the sea." For the prince was bald, he had no hair on his head. He said to her, "How is that possible? Behold, we are very far from them." She told them that there is a glass that burns, and with this she will knock him down. She told them that she would not knock him down till he had reached the very top of the mast, since as long as he was in the middle of the mast, were he to fall, he would fall into the ship, whereas when he reaches the top, then when he falls, he will fall into the sea. She waited until he reached the very top of the mast. Then she took the glass that burns when held opposite the sun and focused it towards his brain, until his brain was burnt and he fell to the ocean. When they, the men on board the prince's ship, saw that the prince had fallen, there was a great commotion. They didn't know what to do, or how could they return home? The king would die of heartbreak. So they decided to go to the ship that they saw, the ship of the emperor's daughter. Perhaps there was some doctor on board who could give them a solution. So they came to the ship of the emperor's daughter and the young noblewomen, and told them not to fear whatsoever, for they, the men of the king's ship, would not harm them at all. The king's men asked them, "Maybe you have on board a doctor who can advise us." And they told the whole story and how the prince had fallen into the sea. The emperor's daughter instructed to take him out of the sea, so they went and found him and took him out. The emperor's daughter took his pulse in her hand and proclaimed that his brain had been burnt. They opened up his brain and found that she had said that's how it was, and they were stunned. Then they asked her to come with them to their home and be the king's doctor, where she would become very prestigious. She did not want this, and she said that she was not a doctor, but simply knows these things. The men on the prince's ship did not want to go home, so the two ships sailed together. The royal ministers thought it favorable for their queen to marry the doctor, since they saw that he was very wise. Because the ministers of the prince who had fallen and died assumed that the emperor's daughter and the daughters of nobility were men, since they were dressed like men. Therefore they wanted their queen, the wife of the dead prince, to marry this doctor, who was really the emperor's daughter, whom they mistook for a doctor, since she knew with her wisdom that the prince's brain had been burnt, and that he should be their king, while their own king, the old king, the father of the king, they would kill. However, they could not possibly suggest such a thing to the queen, that she should marry a doctor. The queen also favored as well to marry the doctor, but she feared the country, lest they not desire him to be king. They came to the decision to make drinking parties, so that while drinking at a moment of merriment, they would be able to talk about it. They made the drinking party for each of them on a separate day. When the day of the drinking party of the doctor, that is the emperor's daughter, he gave them of the aforementioned wine, and they got drunk. When they were married, the minister said how nice it would be if the queen would marry the doctor. And the doctor said it would be very nice, but only if they were saying this with a mouth not drunken. The queen also said how nice it would be to marry the doctor, if only the country would agree to it. The doctor, the emperor's daughter, repeated it would be very nice, but only if they were proposing this with a mouth not drunk. Afterwards, when they sobered up from their drunkenness, the ministers remembered what they had said and were embarrassed from the queen for having suggested such a thing. However, had not the queen herself also said it? She too was embarrassed before them, but hadn't they also said it? So they began to speak to each other about it and settled the matter among them. And she, the queen, married the doctor, who was really the emperor's daughter, whom they thought was a doctor, and they returned home to their country. When their countrymen saw them coming, they rejoiced greatly, since it had been a very long time since the prince had left. They didn't know what had happened to him, and the old king had already died before their return. Afterwards, the countrymen saw that the prince, their king, was not there, and they asked, "Where is our king?" And so they told them the whole story, how the prince had already died, and how they had already taken a new king, whom they had brought with them. The countrymen were very happy that they had received a new king. Now the king, who was really the emperor's daughter, who had now become king, commanded to announce throughout each and every country that anyone everywhere, foreigner, guest, refugee, or exile, should all come to his wedding. Not a single one should be absent. They will all receive great gifts. Furthermore, the king, that is the emperor's daughter, commanded to make fountains all around the city, so that anyone who wants to drink will not have to go away to get a drink, but will be able to find a fountain right near him. He, the king, that is the emperor's daughter, also instructed to have a picture of him drawn next to each and every fountain, and the station guards to watch for anyone coming along and looking intensely at the picture and making a sour face, as someone who looks at something shocking or saddening. They should grab him and put him in prison. All this was done. These three men came along, that is the son of the first king in the story, who was the true groom of the emperor's daughter, who is now the king, the merchant's son, who had been banished by his father on account of the emperor's daughter fleeing forth the ship and with all his merchandise, and the boast king also on account of her, when she fled from him with the 11 daughters of his nobility. Each of the three recognized that this was her picture. They looked at it, remembered, and became distraught. That is, they came to the fountains and saw the picture that was drawn there, and they recognized her, so they looked at it intensely. They were caught and placed in prison. At the time of the wedding, the king, that is the emperor's daughter, commanded to bring the captives before them. The three were brought, and she recognized them, but they did not recognize her, since she was dressed like a man. The emperor's daughter spoke up and said, "You to the king," that is, the exiled king who is one of the prisoners. "You are a king. You were deposed on account of the 11 daughters of nobility who were lost. Here you have the daughters of nobility. Return to your country and your kingdom." Because of the 11 daughters of nobility were there with her. "You are a merchant," that is, he spoke. First she spoke to the deposed king. Now she turned to speak to the merchant, that is, the merchant's son. "You were banished by your father on account of your losing the ship with all its merchandise. Here is your ship with all the merchandise. For the lengthy hold up the money, you now have much greater wealth than the ship, many fold more than there was before. For the same ship with all the merchandise belonging to the merchant's son, with which she had fled, was still with her in its entirety. In addition to this was all the wealth which he had taken from the thieves, which was extraordinary wealth, many fold more. And you, prince, who was her true groom, let us set out on our journey." And they returned home. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, we're going to tale number 3, of a lame son. There was once a sage who called his sons and family before his death and instructed them to water trees. "You also have permission to engage in other occupations, but you must endeavor to water trees." Afterwards the sage passed away and he left sons. He had one son who could not walk. He could stand, but he could not walk. So his brothers provided him sufficiently for his livelihood. They gave him so much that he had extra. So this son who could not walk would steadily save up whatever extra remained beyond his needs until he amassed a certain amount. Then he came to the decision, "Why should I be supported by them? Better that I should begin some business." And though he could not walk, he came up with the solution to hire a carriage, an assistant, and a wagon driver, and travel with them to Leipzig, a city on the Poland-German border, where he would be able to do business even though he could not walk. When the family heard of this, they thought it was a good idea, and they said, "Yes, why should we support him? Better that he has income." So they lent him more money so that he would be able to do business. He hired a carriage, an assistant, and a wagon driver, and set out. They reached an inn, and the assistant suggested that they spend the night there. But the cripple did not want. They implored him, but he refused. So they traveled on, and they got lost in the forest, and bandits attacked them. These bandits had become bandits because there had once been a famine. Someone then came into town and proclaimed, "Whoever wants food should come to me," and several people gathered to him. He acted shrewdly, and whoever he understood would be useless to him he rejected. To one he would say, "You can be a craftsman," while to another he said, "You can be a miller." He chose only intelligent people and went with them to the forest, where he told them that they should become bandits. Since the roads to Leipzig, Breslau, city in Germany, and other places pass by here, and the merchants travel here, we can rob them and take their money. So it was these bandits who attacked the cripple and his men. The wagon driver and his assistant, who were able to flee, fled, and the cripple was left on the carriage. The bandits came along and took the chest of money and asked him, "Why are you sitting?" And he told them that he wasn't able to walk. The bandits took the chest and the horses, and he remained on the carriage. The assistant and the wagon driver, who had fled away somewhere, came to the decision that since they had taken out loans from noblemen, why should they return home where it would be possible that they would be placed in chains? Better that they would remain there, wherever they had fled, and they would be an assistant and a wagon driver here. Now the cripple, as long as he had the food that he had taken from home, the dry bread, hardtack that he had in the carriage, he ate it. But then when it was finished and he had nothing to eat, he thought about what he should do. And he threw himself out of the carriage that he could eat the grasses. He slept alone in the field and was frightened, and his strength was taken from him to the extent that he could not even stand, just crawl. He ate the grass around him. As long as he could stretch out his hand and eat, he would eat at that spot. But when the grass around him was finished and he could no longer stretch out his hand for it, he detached himself and moved on and ate there. He ate grass for a long time. Once he came to a grass the likes of which he had never eaten before. This grass found favor in his eyes because he had been eating grasses for a long time and was familiar with them, and he still had never seen such a grass. He came to the decision to pull it out with its roots. Beneath the roots was a diamond. The diamond was a square. Each side had a different property. On one side it was written that whoever grasps that side will be transported to the place where day and night gather together, where the sun and the moon gather together. When the cripple had uprooted this grass underneath, which was the diamond, he happened to grasp that side, so he was transported to the place where day and night meet. He looked around, and behold, he is there. He heard the sun talking with the moon. The sun was complaining to the moon, since there is a tree that had many branches, fruit, and leaves, and each of its branches fruit and leaves has a unique property. This one is conducive for having children, another for livelihood, another for healing this illness, another for healing a different illness. Each one possesses a different property, so this tree should be watered. If it would be watered, these properties would be extremely conducive. But not only do I not water it by shining on it, I dry it out. The moon answers and said, "You are worried, the worries of others. Let me tell you my worries. I have 1,000 mountains. Surrounding these 1,000 mountains are another 1,000 mountains. That is the place of demons. Now the demons have chicken-like feet. They do not have strength in their own feet, so they suck strength from my feet. On account of this, I have no strength in my feet. And I have a powder that is a healing for my feet, but the wind comes along and carries it away." The son responded, "Is that what you're worried about? I will tell you how to heal. Since there is a path and many paths branch off from that path. One is the path of the righteous. Even someone who is righteous here, the dust from that path is sprinkled underneath every one of his steps, so that every step he is stepping on that dust. Another is the path of heretics. Even someone who is a heretic here, the dust of his path is sprinkled underneath each of his steps. And there is the path of the insane. Even someone who is insane here, the dust of this path is sprinkled underneath each of his steps. And so there are many paths. And there is a different path in consideration of the righteous who accept suffering upon themselves, and the noblemen march them in chains, and they have no strength in their feet. Thus from this path that is sprinkled underneath their feet, so that has strength in their feet. So go there. There's plenty of dust there, and you will have healing for your feet." The cripple heard all this that the sun told to the moon. Meanwhile he looked at another side of the diamond, saw it was written there that whoever grasps that side will be transported to the path from which many paths branch out. So he grasped that side, and he was brought there. He placed his feet on the path whose dust was healing for the feet, and he was immediately healed. He then went and took dust from all of the paths and made for himself bundles. He packed the dust from the path of the righteous separately, and the dust of each of the other paths separately. He took them with him. Then he came to the decision to return to the forest in which he had been robbed. Then he arrived there. He chose a tall tree near the path along which the bandits go out to rob. He took the dust of the righteous and the dust of the insane and mixed them together and spread them on the path. And then he climbed up the tree and sat there to see what would happen to them. He saw that the bandits going out, having been sent out by the head bandit mentioned above, to go out and steal, when they came to that path, as soon as they stepped on the powder, they became righteous, and they began to cry out for their souls for having robbed until then, and for having killed several people. But since it was mixed with the powder of the insane, they became crazy tzaddikim and began to argue with each other. This one said, "It's your fault we robbed," while another said, "It's your fault," until they killed each other. The head bandit sent another group, and the same thing happened, and they killed each other. And so it continued afterwards until they were all killed, until he, the former cripple, understood that all the bandits were killed, and there was no one left besides the head bandit and one other. So he came down from the tree and swept up the dust from the path, and sprinkled only dust from the path of the righteous, and went to sit in the tree. Now the head bandit was wondering how it was that he sent all the bandits, and not one of them returned to him. So he set out himself with the one bandit that remained with him. As soon as he set foot on the path, where the former cripple had sprinkled the dust of the righteous by itself, he became exotic. He began to cry out to the other bandit over his soul, over how much he had killed so many people and so much. He tore graves and was penitent and was very remorseful. When the son saw how remorseful and penitent the bandit was, he came down from the tree. As soon as the head bandit saw that he found a person, he began to cry out, "Woe to my soul, I have done this and that. Woe, give me penance." The son told him, "Return to me the chest that you robbed from me, for it was written by them on all the stolen goods, on which day it was stolen and from whom." The head bandit said, "I will immediately return it to you. I will even give you all my treasures of stolen goods. Just give me penance." The son said to him, "Your penance is just to go to the town and call out and confess, 'I am the one who proclaimed then, during the famine, that whoever wants food should come to me. I made many people into bandits, and I murdered and robbed many souls. This is your penance.'" The head bandit gave him all his treasures and went with him to the city and did as said. Judgment was passed in that town that, considering that he had murdered so many people, he should be hanged to serve as a warning. After this, the son, who had been a cripple, decided to go to the 2,000 mountains to see what goes on there. When he arrived there, he stood at a distance from the 2,000 mountains, and he saw many, many thousands upon thousands and tens of thousands of families of demons, because demons proliferate like human beings, and they are very numerous. He saw their king sitting on a throne upon which no human being ever sat on such a throne. He saw them, how they scoffed. One told over that he had harmed a baby, another said that he had harmed someone's arm, and yet another told over that he had harmed someone's leg, summarily another caper. In the midst of this, he saw a father and mother demon walking alone and weeping. They were asked, "Why are you weeping?" And he answered, "We have a son who would always go his ways, and he always returns at a certain time, but it is now long after that time and he has not returned." They were brought before the king. The king ordered to send messengers throughout the world to find him. On their way out, the men met someone who was their son's friend, who also asked them, "Why are you weeping?" They told him as they had before, and he said to them, "I will tell you, we used to have a certain island, sea, which was our territory. And afterwards, the king whom this island was in this jurisdiction went and wanted to build buildings there, and he laid foundations. The son, that is the son of the demons who was lost, said to me that we should harm him. So we took away the king's strength. The king engaged in doctors, but they could not help him. So he began engaging in sorcerers. There was one sorcerer there who knew his family, and he did not know my family. Therefore, he could not do anything to me, but he knew his family. So he seized him and is torturing him greatly. They took him, the demon, who told over all of this to the king, and he told it over before the king. And the king said, "Return the strength to him," the king. The demon replied, "There was someone by us who had no strength, and we had given him the strength." The king said, "Take that strength away from him and return it to the king." They told the king that this demon who had received the strength had become a cloud. The king said that they should summon the cloud and bring it here. So they sent a messenger to bring the cloud. This man, the son, the former cripple who had witnessed all this, himself, "I will go and see this affair. How do these humanoid creatures become a cloud?" So he followed the messenger to the city where the cloud was. He asked the town people, "Why is the cloud covering so much of the city?" They answered him, "Over here, on the contrary, there was never a cloud here. that it was for a time that the cloud is covering. The messenger then summoned the cloud and went away with the cloud. The sun came to the decision to follow them to hear what they were saying. Here the messenger asked the cloud, "How did you come to be a cloud here?" The cloud answered, "I will tell you a story. There was once a sage who lived in a country where the emperor was a big heretic who made all the people of that country into heretics. So the sage went and summoned all of his family members and said to them, 'Surely you see that the emperor is a big heretic and has made all of the countrymen into heretics, and some of our relatives he also made heretics. So let us set out to the desert so that we will be able to remain faithful to the blessed God.' They agreed with him, so the sage uttered a divine name and brought them to the desert. This desert was not favorable in his eyes, so he uttered a divine name and transported them to a different desert. This desert was also not favorable in his eyes, so again he uttered a divine name and brought them to a different desert, and this desert was favorable in his eyes. This desert was close to the 2,000 mountains, so the sage went and made a circle around themselves so that no one would be able to come near them. Now there is a tree that if it would be watered, there would remain any of us demons. Therefore some of us stand night and night digging to prevent water from reaching the tree." The messenger asked him, "Why do they have to stand day and night? Once they have dug the first time to prevent the water, it should be sufficient." He, the cloud, replied, "There are gossipers among us, and these gossipers go and instigate disputes between this king and a different king. This causes wars, which causes earthquakes, and the earth around the ditches cave in, which is possible for water to reach the tree. Therefore they must stand there constantly to dig. And when a new king is crowned among us, they all make all types of practical jokes before him, and they rejoice. This one scoffs about how he harmed the baby, and the mother mourns over it, while another presents other practical jokes and similarly many types of caper. When the king gets into a happy mood, he takes a stroll with his ministers and tries to uproot the tree, because if this tree could not exist at all, it would be a very good for us. So he strengthens his heart very much in order to uproot the tree entirely, and when he approaches the tree, then the tree gives a great shout. The king is then overcome with fear and retreats. Once a new king was appointed among us. Exceptional practical jokes were presented before him, and he became very elated and made his heart very strong and courageous, and he intended to completely and totally uproot the tree. So he set out to stroll with his ministers and very much strengthened his heart, and ran to completely uproot the tree. When he came to the tree, it gave a great shout, and the king was overwhelmed with fear and retreated. He became very angry, and he returned. As he was going, he saw many people sitting. These were the group of sage. So he sent them some of his men to deal with them appropriately, as was their custom always, that is, to harm them. As soon as the sage's family saw them, they were overcome with fear. The elder, that is the sage, however, told them, "Do not fear." When the demons arrived there, they were unable to come close to them on account of the circle that surrounded them. So the king sent other messengers, but they were unable. The king became extremely angry and went to himself, and he too was unable to come close to them. So he asked the sage to let him in. The sage said to him, "Since you are asking, I will let you in, but it is not proper for a king to go alone, so I will you in with one other." The sage then opened up for them a passageway. They entered, and he once again closed the circle. King then asked the elder, "Why did you come to settle here on our property?" The sage said, "Why is it your property? It's my property." The king said, "Aren't you afraid of me?" The sage replied, "No." The king said, "You're not afraid." And he spread himself out and began so tall that he reached the sky and wanted to swallow the sage. The elder said, "I'm still not afraid at all. However I want, you will be afraid of me." So the sage went and prayed a bit, and big thick clouds formed, and there was loud thunder. Thunder kills demons. So all of the king's ministers were with him were killed. Only the king and the one who had entered the circle with him survived. He begged the sage to end the thunder, and it stopped. The king spoke up and said, "Since you are such a person, I will give a book of all the demon families. There are miracle workers who only know of one demon family, and even that family they don't know completely. But I will give you a book in which is recorded all of the families. Because the king has a record of them all, even a newborn is registered by the king." So the king sent a minister who was with him to fetch the book. It turned out that the sage did good by letting the king in, but the other to enter, otherwise whom would the king have sent? The minister brought the book. He opened it and saw that thousands and tens of thousands of demon families were recorded in it. The king promised that they would never harm the elder's entire family, and he commanded to bring portraits of all the members of his family. And even if a baby was born, to immediately bring their portrait so that no one in the elder's family would be harmed. Afterwards, when the time came for the elder to leave the world, he called his sons and commanded them and said to him, "I leave you this book. Surely you see that I have the power to use this book in holiness, and even still I don't use it. Rather, I have faith in the blessed God. You too should not use it. Even if there will be one of you who will be able to use it in holiness, nevertheless he should not use it, but just have faith in the blessed God." The sage passed away, and the book was passed on as an inheritance and came to the son's son. He had the power to use it in holiness, but he maintained faith in the blessed God and did not use it as the elder, his grandfather, had instructed. The gossipers among the demons tried to persuade the elder's grandson, "Since you have grown daughters and you don't have the wherewithal to support them and marry them off, therefore use this book." Grandson did not know that it was the demons who were trying to persuade him, and thought that it was his heart advising him to do so. So he traveled to his grandfather on his grave and asked him, "You left a testament that we should not use this book. Rather, we should have faith in the blessed God, and now my heart is telling me to use it." That Aziz sage answered, "Even though you have the power to use it in holiness, better that you have faith in the blessed God and don't use it, and the blessed God will help you." And that is what the grandson did. Once the king of the country where his grandson of the elder lived became ill. He engaged doctors, but they could not heal him. Since the climate in that country was so hot, the medicines were not effective. So the king decreed that the Jews should pray for him. Our king said, "Since this grandson has the power to use this book in holiness and he does not use it, let us therefore do him a favor." So the king commanded me to be a cloud there over this city, so that the king would be healed by the medicines that he had already taken and the medicines he would take in the future. The grandson knew nothing about this, and that is why I am a cloud here. All this was what the cloud told to the messenger, and the son, the former cripple, had been following them and listening. The cloud was brought before the demon king, and the king commanded to take the strength and return it to the other king, and they returned to him the strength. The son of the demons then returned very afflicted without strength, because he had been severely tortured there. He was very angry at the sorcerer who had tortured him much. So he instructed his children and his family to always ambush the sorcerer. And they have amongst them gossipers that went and told the sorcerer to protect himself because they were waiting to ambush him. So the sorcerer did some artifices and called upon other sorcerers who knew families in order to protect himself from them. The demon's son and his family were extremely angry at the tattlers for having revealed his secret plan to the sorcerer. Once it happened that some members of the demon's family and some of the tattlers served together on the lookout by the king. The family members went and made false charges against the tattlers, and the king killed the tattlers. The remaining tattlers were enraged, and they went and made a rebellion. That is a huge war between all the kings. And there was famine, infirmity, murder, and plagues among the demons. Wars were waged between all the kings. This caused an earthquake, and all the earth around the tree fell in, and the tree was watered completely. None of the demons survived whatsoever, and they became as they had never existed. Amen. The secrets of the story are alluded to in chapter 1 of Psalms. Fortunate is the man, the path of the wicked, the path of the righteous. These are the aspects of the path mentioned in the story that have the dust that is sprinkles, etc. He will be like a tree planted near streams of water, which gives its fruit at the right time, and its leaves, and everything he does will succeed. This refers to the tree of the story, that all of its fruit and leaves, everything in its entirety, are all very beneficial. Examine and you'll find more allusions. Fortunate is the man who has not walked, for initially he could not walk, has not stood, for afterwards he could not even stand. Assembly of jokers refers to the group of demon jokers who make practical jokes, like chaff driven away by the wind, refers to the wind that carried away the dust. All of this is only a few superficial allusions that the Rabbi Nachman gave us to see partially, so that we understand and comprehend to a small degree the extent of where these stories reach. But the concepts are still and remain completely hidden, for all of these stories that Rabbi Nachman told are extremely exalted from human understanding and hidden from the eye of all living creatures, etc. And I think that'll be it for this evening. And like OneShul depends on donations. And there's a donation button up above. You can pay however much you want, but the recommended payment is like $5. But you can give whatever you want. If you don't have any money tonight, you can give later, or you can volunteer for the other things as well. And you want to have any questions? I don't think I can answer them. Oops. OneShul depends on donations. And there's a donation. Push the wrong button. That's. Nobody has any questions? I'll just go ahead and close out and say shalom, and hopefully see you Friday.